And ladies and gentlemen, now let's get to our patron, ICSI, Padma Bhushan, Professor Jagdish and Sheth. It's very, very difficult for me to introduce him and to, share what he has brought to the global fraternity and to the ecosystem as far as management is concerned. And then we will have his vision, management, MBA, future of MBA, future of service industry, future of India, how India is moving ahead and where we would be in the Amrit Kal up to 2047, and how ICSI should work and how we should progress and how in a humble way we should contribute.
Thank you, Dr. Gulshan. I have been quite amazed how much ICSI has done for the service sector. It's just mind-boggling to see the impact you are making already in transforming the services economy and the industry. So I'll make a few observations and suggest the future of services industry in general, maybe specific to certain sectors of the services industry, but I'll keep my comments more general, and then maybe we may have a little dialogue if necessary. Services sector now contributes 50% to India's GDP. It is the largest compared to the agriculture sector and the manufacturing sector. It's growing faster, and therefore by 2047, the vision, services sector is estimated to take over about 60% of the total GDP in a fast-growing economy, which says it's going to grow 1.5 to 2 times faster than the normal growth that's taking place right now. And this is due to several factors. First one is that services industry generally is a low asset industry, as we call it. You don't have to have enormous amount of capital dollars to invest into it to really start, except of course the airlines industry, telecommunications, but the traditional industries can be actually started much quicker, much faster, and therefore it can grow faster. Technology has enabled enormously, especially during COVID time period. The e-commerce platforms that came in, the home delivery business, if you analyze the e-grocery delivery in India, it's fantastic actually. And I'll talk about some of the things one can improve. But I think the technology has been a big factor, especially the cell phone industry revolution in India. Both China and India have gained enormously. So here is a technology invented in America, commercialized in America, but it is lost it to Asia primarily. And I think with the emergence of smartphones, as they're penetrating more and more, and with very affordable platforms for networks, such as the Reliance Jio, for example, I think we are going to have much greater growth, unlocking the potential of the service industry. Second factor is even more interesting. If you look at the next generation of people, same family, the next generation of people are behaving very differently. There's a discontinuity from one generation to the other, at least in the way you live daily. Next generation of young people will not learn cooking, cleaning, and childcare. Remember, this is when you do it at home yourselves, does not add to the national GDP. Biggest outsourcing is not Indian IT services doing work for the world, but biggest outsourcing is happening at home. So most of the meals are prepared by somebody else. Most of the meals are bought from outside, delivered at home. We are behaving very much like a typical modern society all over the world. That is true for cooking, that is true for cleaning, and that is true for raising children. So, baby centers or kindergarten, etc., kinds of things are happening enormously. That's a huge, huge change, because when you do a commercial activity, it adds to the GDP, and the ratio from the raw materials that you buy, let's say in cooking, versus the value in the marketplace, value add is about 3 to 4 times. That says that whatever the raw materials we buy amplifies enormously. So you are going to see growth of those industries even, which is, I'll come to a point about service-driven products versus product-driven services. Third area Equally important is export potential. Government's vision of $1 trillion export services, export economy, I think is underestimation. IT services and IT-enabled services has already crossed $250 billion. Especially during the COVID time period, there has been more remote work done. And now for the first time we see in India, all the major Silicon Valley companies, whether it's a Google, Microsoft, any one of them, will invest their own development centers in India. India has the scale in terms of the manpower, for example, and they will not outsource to outside companies such as the TCS or Wipro or Infosys, but they will build their own. In fact, you can already see in accounting, Ernst & Young has 50,000 employees working in one location alone in Hyderabad. Largest employer in IT services today is Accenture. Think about that. And I was with Wipro on the board for many years, and I just visited them, and they already crossed 250,000 employees themselves. So India will become the largest employment for services sectors of the world, which is a very important one to realize. And I think the potential will be much higher as we move up the value chain, whereby we offer services which are more professional certified rather than manual services. Manual services where we began, like manual labor in agriculture, but I think we are going to move up, and I'll come to that. Now, this is all great news, but services sector is still what I would call a rough diamond. It can be polished and enhanced even more, and my estimation of 60% of the GDP by 2047 may be an underestimation. So what are the issues with the services sector? First of all, it is still highly unorganized. Except for the new technology-driven services, such as cell phone services, such as, for example, airlines, which are the new mode of transportation in India. Other than that, banking to some extent, they are organized, but most of the services industry is unorganized. And how do you make it organized? Because on an organized sector, you don't have the scale. You have the size, but not the scale. So how do you create a scale and you get the scale economies in the process? Services sector is still largely unbranded. While we do have the branded banks and branded telephone services and branded newer technologies, but still we have a massive, massive opportunity to engage into branding. So how do you create branded services becomes a very key issue. And the last thing equally important is that services sector has a strong variation in quality. I can get excellent service or I can get a poor service from two different competitors, or within the same company at two different times, within the same company by the same person at two different times. There's a huge variation on quality. And just like in Japan, Deming actually put, who was a statistician, quality assurance on products. We need to have something like a Deming process to make sure that our quality and skill sets are standardized to a level where it's delivered again and again at an exceptional level. The last element, of course, is that services industry, even today, is a cash economy. So 50% estimation of the GDP may be undervalued. It's still a very large cash economy, and as it gets into more and more digitized economy, primarily through GST mechanisms or whatever they are, or more technology put into the retail scene, I think we'll see much greater growth. So ultimately, the summary is that we have the size. India is a large nation with large population who is capable of working, for example, not large size, but it has no scale. So fundamentally, service industry needs to go from unorganized to organized sector and from low tech to high tech. And I'll talk about how to get into the stuff. First thing one has to do, and ICSI can be a very good catalyst actually across government agencies and the private sector. Invest in frontline people. We do not do that well. In fact, nobody does it. You start as a frontline person, You move up the career, better people move up further, who is left behind? We have to have a program where there's a universal commitment to frontline people in their skills plus their technology enablement. How can you give the devices in their hands? They're able to make a decision based upon algorithms, as all technicians do in America. Today, they don't call back a boss and say, here is the price, here's the delivery. It is already on the handheld data device, more like an Apple type device. Every technician who comes to our house in America today carries the device, or a very large cell phone, as it is true in India. So investing in frontline technology and investing in frontline people is very key, and especially skill set. There are two skill sets with frontline people. One is what I would call the soft skills skill set, and the other one is the typical competency-based skill set, certification of some sort. But soft skills is much more important. Ultimately, you are in service business because you care, especially in the health industry. People work as medical doctors, people work as Ayurvedic experts, people work as nurses, people work at all things because they believe in the cause. There's a mission-driven attitude. So how can we take that passion and make it into a compassion? Competency is fine, but compassion is equally important. And service industries and services differentiate themselves very well on how compassionate people are, and what matters there is selection as much as training. So that's clearly one key area of huge polishing the rough diamond to create a value. As you know, a rough diamond to a polished diamond, a good diamond cutter increases the value by at least 15 to 20 times. And some diamonds are very exceptional, obviously. Second area is processes. Services industry still is not as much process driven as ad hoc driven. Adhocracy, as I call it, not a bureaucracy. When situation happens and you scramble and get it done, and like a crisis management, we improvise very well. But I think in this case, one needs the discipline of processes, as it is happening, of course, in many of the IT, technology-based industries, service industries. So processes is very, very important in terms of creating an architecture which somehow a nation can do it as a whole process-driven nation across services sector. But processes is a second major area, whether it's a order-taking process, for example, order fulfillment process, for example, or payment process, for example, whatever they are. And we're doing a fantastic job. I mean, we have to take a pride that here is a nation which is otherwise an emerging economy, probably has the best UPI platform in the world, and we are exporting that platform now. We have to take a pride that Aadhaar, which is a biometric database of 1.3 billion people, no nation has anything like it. So we are very capable. If we decide to invest in them and make a national commitment of some sort, either as a collaboration, as we did with cooperatives in dairy products in my generation 60 years ago when I left India. It's very fascinating how dairy products where the cow will come to the house, you will milk it in front of us, etc. But today you have the massive, massive cooperatives like Amul and many more Amuls. That cooperatives was a key movement nationally. I think one can create a similar movement around here. But how can we create processes? Next area has to do, in fact, with creating systems. Systems is infrastructure, both physical. As we add more ports, as we add more airports, as we build better highways, the services sector will benefit. In fact, my estimates runs that infrastructure that you invest, systems that you invest in manufacturing gives additional 1.5% GDP growth generally. In services, surprisingly, it's almost 2.5%. It gives a kick, it gives a multiplier. It enhances the whole services sector to a next level, which I think, so systems is very key, which is physical system, but equally important now is digital system. And the last area is one that I strongly believe in. In services industries, I'm an educator myself. I don't work for money alone. What drives me is to unlock the potential of students, potential of staff people, potential of my colleagues, etc. It's a mission-driven approach, purpose-driven. So I think we need to learn that. I think somehow, how can we train our people where they believe in whatever they do at two levels? They believe in the occupation, whether you are a hospitality person, or you are a medical doctor, you are an educator, school teacher, whatever services are. But second thing is that we take a nation's pride, that I can show to the world that I'm the best. The soft power of the nation comes from people as much as it comes from branded products. We have a whole history about product-driven soft power of Japan, from a low-quality, cheap goods in my generation becoming world-class manufacturer, followed by South Korea the same way. Today we have the Samsungs, the Hyundai in the automobile, and of course we have the LG Industries, world-class, even in most demanding nations like Germany or America or Sweden, they stand up to competition. There's a pride. There's a national pride behind those companies and the products. Same thing can happen for us about the services. And I'll give you an anecdote and I'll stop that, Vivek, if it's okay with you. I have traveled quite a lot. In my younger days when I travel, especially in Europe, first of all, they don't look in your eye with respect or admiration. Every time I go, they would all often ask me, are you a diamond merchant? Today, when I travel in Europe, they think, are you an IT professional? Isn't that interesting? With a smile, with kind of excitement, with admiration, you can see the body language of people as you travel all over advanced economies. So I think having a nation pride as a part of mission is as important as occupation pride. And I was in India for 3 weeks, and I stayed in several hotels, and you could feel that some hotels create that pride in their occupation. I saw in one hotel people working for 25 years, still happy, still wanting to do more and more and more. I saw some other hotels where there were young people who really wanted to train themselves very well, but wanting to go abroad as a part of the multinational chain of hotels and hospitality industry. I will tell you last point. India, I've done a lot of work on Indian tourism actually. I was first of all surprised that out of 1.3 billion tourists in India annually, which number is large, vast majority are Indian tourism in India. Most of them has to do with pilgrimages, religious places, visiting, etc. But it's all done unorganized way. Handoff is not right in many ways. So how can we organize it? So the market is actually Indian market as much as export market in tourism. Export market in tourism is going to be primarily specialty tourism or niche tourism, as you called it, the conference. There are about a dozen niche things where India is the only place to go. And there is a fantastic opportunity, not only, of course, our history and the civilization and the excellent, incredible archaeological findings that we have, or temples that we have, but also surprisingly many of the natural areas. And again, somebody mentioned Northeast. Northeast is a fantastic opportunity if one can organize. So organizing medical tourism, and I was surprised to find worldwide medical tourism, the biggest thing is dentistry. People go abroad for dental care from America, whether you're Russian, whether you're Hungarian, doesn't make any difference whether you're Latin American or Indian, because cost of doing dental work is so high, and therefore even governments are blessing that medical tourism will be allowed and paid by the governments, such as in Canada or national health systems in United Kingdom. I can go on, but I do want to mention that fundamentally, Indian economy could not be driven where the products create services. I buy an automobile, so I need a financing, I need repair maintenance. I buy a home, same thing, I need repair maintenance, furniture, etc. Today, the reverse is going to happen. Services will generate manufacturing. There is a whole series of products in healthcare. New beds are made, new equipment is put into every patient room, for example, diagnosed. It's all services-driven manufacturing, which we have never thought about it. So one need to articulate, maybe have a position paper through ICSI about services generating manufacturing in India. Thank you very much.